Welcome back, I'm David Gibbons. In 1987, Dr. Ben Carson made headlines around the world after an epic operation that successfully separated twins joined at the head. His career as a neurosurgeon can only be described as stellar, as he has pioneered various surgical techniques that have transformed lives. Carson's accomplishments were recognised in 2008 when he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the United States' highest civilian honour. But Dr. Carson gives much of the credit for his success to his godly mother, who instilled in him a strong sense of Christian values and the importance of education. Dr. Carson has added to his neurosurgical career a commitment to encouraging young people towards excellence. I spoke with Dr. Carson during his visit to the Sydney Adventist Hospital. It's great to meet you, Dr. Carson.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
I'd like to start talking about Mum. She was a unique person. She was married at the age of 13. She was one of 24 children, as I understand it. And she was very strict on you as you were growing up, you and your brother. Yeah. She made sure you read 2 books every week.
That's right.
Tell me about Mum.
Well, you know, she was one of those individuals who had a very, very difficult life, but she never developed what I call the victim's mentality. She never felt sorry for herself. And she was never willing to accept excuses for herself or from us. And I think perhaps one of the best things that she did for us is not to accept excuses. Yeah. When we would come up with one, she would say, "Do you have a brain?" If the answer to that was yes, then she would say, "Then you could have thought your way out of it." It really doesn't matter what anybody else said or did. And you know, when people won't accept your excuses, you stop looking for excuses. You start looking for solutions. So, you know, and she was the type of individual who would go to the Goodwill and you know, buy a shirt that had a hole in the sleeve and put a patch on it, and then put another similar patch on the other sleeve, and people would say, "Wow, where'd you get that from?" You know, she was quite industrious.
Yeah. Now, you grew up in a poor family. I mean, you know, Mum was separated from Dad after a while, and it must have been tough. Your teachers called you a dummy at school and all the rest of it. At what point did you recognise that you had giftedness?
Well, first of all, I must say I hated poverty. You know, some people hate spiders and some people hate snakes. I hated poverty. I just hated it. And once I started reading, though, because my mother made us read, turned off the TV, I started reading about people of accomplishment. And one of the things that I realized about them is that, you know, they controlled their own destiny based on what they knew. And I said, you know, I could become like that. And, you know, I started reading. I got to the point where no book was safe in my grasp. I read everything I could get my hands on. And it completely turned around my academic performance. The same kids who were calling me dummy in the 5th grade were coming to me in the 7th grade saying, "Benny, Benny, Benny, how do you work this problem?" And I'd say, "Sit at my feet, youngster, while I instruct you." I was having a good time at that point. But same person, same brain, but a very, very different attitude.
Mm. Now, you're very passionate about wanting to break the cycle of poverty. How are you doing that?
Well, you know, we have a program in the United States called the Carson Scholars Fund. And basically what we do is we take children who achieve at the highest academic levels and also demonstrate humanitarian qualities, and we try to put them on the same kind of pedestal as we do the all-state basketball players and all-state wrestlers. We give them money, the school gets a big trophy, they get to wear a medal, they go to a banquet, they get local press attention. We also put reading rooms into schools. These are fascinating places that no young person would pass up, decorated with various themes, and very comfortable. And the kids get points for the amount of time they spend in there and the number of books they read, and they can trade those in for prizes, which they do in the beginning, but it doesn't take long before that begins to translate into excellent academic performance. And of course, you know, in terms of high school dropouts, 70 to 80% of them are functionally illiterate. So if you can truncate that way downstream, you're not going to have that problem upstream. And if you don't have that problem, you're going to have far fewer people, you know, who continue the cycle of poverty.
Now, some of the things that Mum taught you when you were young was to have Christian values. Now, you're a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Why?
Well, it's basically because I found it to be the faith that most corresponded with what seemed right to me. You know, when I went off to college, I actually said, you know, no, that's not the right faith, and I went on an exploration, and I started looking at all kinds of different faiths. But then I came back and I said, you know, it is the right faith, it's just maybe some of the wrong people. But, you know, basically I like truth, and I don't like manipulation. And I find that the Seventh-day Adventist faith accepts the whole Bible. It doesn't sort of like pick and choose and say, well, this part's right and this part's not, and, you know, we'll choose this over this. I don't like that kind of thing. I like consistency.
I'm talking with Dr. Ben Carson, and we'll be back to talk about his gifted hands after this short break.
Avondale provides you with an opportunity that's more than just a degree. They offer you life experiences and opportunities to get involved and to really grow and mature. I think Avondale support the self-giving and the helping of others and putting others first and thinking outside the square. I think Avondale supports you and encourages you to look beyond yourself and what more there is in life.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, we were talking just before the break there about you being a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Now, I also understand that you've engaged with Richard Dawkins, the atheist,
Yes.
about the evolution-creation debate.
Yes.
Tell me, what was that engagement like?
Well, this was with the Academy of Achievement. It's an International Achievement Summit. And in this particular case, it was myself and Francis Collins, who's the head of the NIH and headed up the Human Genome Project on one side, and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett, another well-known atheist, on the other side, to talk about faith versus science. Are they compatible? Are they incompatible? See, my belief is that they're quite compatible if you're going to be objective. But a lot of, quote, scientists, unquote, are not objective. They just believe what they want to believe, and it becomes really not true science in that sense. For instance, how did the universe get here? And they say, well, there was a big bang, and everything came into perfect order. And I say, but don't you also believe in the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy, which says things move towards states of disorganization? So you're saying now there was a big bang and everything became perfectly organized? And they say, well, if you do it enough times over billions and billions of years, eventually one of them will be perfectly organized. And I said, is that so? So if I blow a hurricane through a junkyard enough times over billions and billions of years, eventually a fully formed 747 ready to fly will come out on the other end. Eventually, is that correct? Well, you know. But, you know, basically it's the same kind of analogy, and a 747 is much less complex.
Well, you've been interested in studying science. You went to Yale, where you met your wife, and started with psychology.
Right.
Then you decided to get into neurosurgery, still messing around with the brain, I guess.
Just went from the intangible to the tangible.
I'd like to know about that very first, that well-known operation, I guess, where you were able to separate conjoined twins after 22 hours, a long, long day, I guess. Just tell me briefly about that experience.
Well, you know, that was quite an operation, because occipital craniophagus, these are twins joined at the back of the head, very, very complex, and had never before been separated, with both surviving. And I had gotten interested in the whole concept of conjoined twins months before I knew anything about the Bender twins, and had actually tried to come up with a solution. I was talking to a friend of mine who was the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Hopkins, who was very familiar with hypothermic arrest, where you cool the body temperature, pump all the blood out, the heart is stopped, and then you can operate on it for up to an hour in an infant, pump the blood back in, warm it up, start the heart up. And I said, wow, what if you could do that right during the critical part of the separation? Maybe you could do it without them exsanguinating or bleeding to death. And then I put it on the back shelf, and I said, why am I wasting my time thinking about this? I'm not going to see a set of Siamese twins. Next thing I know, a couple of months later, here they come, looking for somebody who could possibly come up with a solution so that they could both survive, because it had been recommended in Europe that the mother choose the twin that she wanted to survive, and basically they would cut the other one off. And she just could not choose, as it'd be very difficult for a mother to do that. And when they came, I started talking about this utilization of hypothermic arrest, and everybody said, you know what, that could possibly work. And we started putting together the team, and the rest is history.
And now a film about your story has been made with Cuba Gooding Jr. Now, originally the producers wanted to remove all the references of God and all the rest, but you wouldn't allow that. Why was that?
Well, they said, you know, this is a movie that's not made for a Christian audience. This is made for a general audience. And therefore, we need to remove many of these references to God and religion. And I said, that's fine, you can do that, but if you're going to take that out, take me out too, because it won't be about me. It'll be about somebody else. And they backed off. And I think they're very happy they did, because last month, the movie won Most Inspirational Movie, the Epiphany Award, which comes with a six-figure check, by the way, which they were very glad about. And then also last month, the Image Awards, it won Best Television Movie, and Cuba Gooding won Best Actor, and Kimberly Elise, who played my mom, won Best Actress. So, of course, it's not done for that purpose, but you know, it's wonderful to see all those people who put so much hard work into it to be recognized, and I've been flabbergasted by the outpouring of sentiment about the movie. I knew it was going to be effective, because that's the way God works. It's just like the book. When it first came out, the publisher said, this is a great book. It's probably going to sell like 14,000 copies, which is really good for an autobiography. And now it's very close to 2 million copies.
Well, it's been wonderful talking with you today. I've been talking with Dr. Ben Carson, and we'll see you after the break.